Good day and greetings from the Great White North. My name is Prickly Poo and welcome to day 146 of a year of change. 146. I don't know what happened there. Get a new documentary up for this week. It's actually a longer one. It's about 4 hours. But it's in 4 parts, so you don't have to watch the whole thing all at once. Before I actually get to that, one of the hard parts about trying to find good documentaries out there is that, and I mean, we've had a couple of bad ones, but the vast majority of them seem to be sort of a melodramatic extremist view. Sort of more of a sideshow than anything else. It's always something that, well, this person is 1,000 pounds, so, oh my god, look at all the horrible stuff that they're going through. Or, there just seems to be an atmosphere of, like, a freak show that goes along with it. And I've tried to put in ones, like even the ones that we have where the people are, extremely overweight, where they're bedridden or they're, over 1,000 pounds, that at least there's something to it that we can all take away. And I've tried really hard to avoid those sort of, I don't want to use another word other than dramatic, because, I mean, obviously the issues that people go through and everything else are difficult, but there just seems to be that showmanship that goes along with it. And I don't want this to turn into something that, like, every week we're showing something that's sort of a circus sideshow. So it is a little difficult to try to find those. But what I found with this is that this series was actually put out by HBO 3 years ago. In 2012, they did a whole series called Weight of the Nation. And they really took a long look at all the different aspects of the weight problem that's been growing and growing and growing. They look at the consequences of it. They look at childhood obesity. They look at all the different surgical means that people are going through, the different weight loss programs that they've been through, just everything. It's really sort of an all-encompassing, as much as they can do in 4 hours. But there isn't that same, that same air of, that shock value, I guess, is probably the best way to put it, that people are tend to sort of go for. And that's the difficult part in trying to find good documentaries, because a lot of the time it doesn't really give you any new information. There's nothing that you can take from it other than looking at it and saying, oh my god, this person was, 1,000 pounds, and that's it. So when we're putting these in here, there's always something in there that we can take away from it, whether it's the personal story of them, or it's showing what they've tried to do to counteract that, whether they've succeeded or whether they failed. So that's one thing that's really tough when you're trying to go through these, because I have run into a few that would be good to show, but there's really nothing that you can take away from it. It sort of regurgitates all the information that we already know. It goes through all the different weight or health problems that weight brings. It'll say, well, you run the risk of diabetes and sleep apnea and, joint pain and just sort of all the things that we already know. And then it's really just sort of showcasing this person is 700 pounds and this person is 500 pounds. And although sometimes it will show what they've done to sort of break through that cycle, a lot of the time it's really just the television equivalent of just pointing at someone and saying, oh my god, look at them. So I really want to try to avoid those. We've had some that lean towards that, but again, there's always something that we can take away from it. There's always some little bit of information that we probably didn't know or before we watched it. That's what I try to look for. And with this HBO series, there's a tremendous amount of stuff that you can take away from it. Not necessarily a lot of the health problems, because we have those. We know what we're expecting. We know what's coming for us if we don't change our ways. But a lot of it are just things that you don't think of, like farmer subsidies. They bring that in. They show, aside from that, the yo-yoing, they sort of go into a little bit more in depth, showing exactly why we tend to gain more back when we diet. Just little things here and there. Again, it's a 4-part series. They're about an hour long each, so it's difficult to cram all that stuff in there. But they really do their best. HBO stuff is pretty good all the way around. So I'm going to put the very first episode up. It's from their actual YouTube channel, so they're very easy to find. They have the numbering off a little bit. They have episode 1, 2, 3, and 3. So you'll be able to find it when you go in. They aren't really, there isn't sort of a continuation. They don't link up. Like, you don't have to watch number 1 first. So you can sort of jump around, so it's not going to be that bad. But just as you're watching through these, there is quite a bit of new information that we can take from it. Stuff that you didn't know before. And again, there is some of it that we're going to be very familiar with. We understand that, that yo-yo effect, where you diet and then you gain it all back. I mean, it does sort of go into a little bit more in depth as to why that happens, but and there are a lot of things that it will explain that we already know. But we're getting to a stage now where we've been doing this for a few months, where we are going to start repeating things. We are going to start seeing more information that we didn't know. But there's sometimes that is going to get put in there just for the fact that there are some of you out there that probably have not watched the majority of the documentaries that are in there. Also, every now and then I've got to go through the list again because these are, it's YouTube. So some of the people, their channels drop off. They delete the videos. So periodically, I mean, I've had to go in 3 or 4 times throughout the past few months and go back and try to find that documentary again and put it into the list again. Because they'll delete the video if it's not getting enough views for them or whatever the reason, or their channel gets shut down. Because, again, some of these, unless it's actually through proper channels, some of these I'm sure are violating some copyright law somewhere. But this is actually from HBO's channel, so these will probably stay up for quite some time. But I'm sort of losing my train of thought because now this is turning into something else. Normally I sort of go through and say, here's what you can expect. I can't even talk. Here are what you can expect. Grammar is way off. Here's what you can expect from this documentary. Here's what it does. There's so much information packed into these. It goes through all the health issues. It goes through the psychological issues. It goes through the emotional issues. It goes through social issues. It goes through, just absolutely everything. Right from, from the time we're kids right up until the time when we have to go in for bariatric surgery. So it sort of jumps back and forth in between them, but each one does have a theme. So you'll be able to go up, take a look, and overall, obviously, you're not going to be able, you might be able to do it all in one sitting. If you can, bravo. But generally, they're about an hour long each. Obviously, all the commercials cut out of it. HBO doesn't have commercials anyway, do they? Never mind. I don't know what I'm talking about. But I just find that there's always something that we can take away from the good ones that are in there. I've run into a few that are, in my opinion, very, very, very bad. Just because it really is simply just a matter of showing someone and saying, oh, look how fat they are. Here are the problems that they have. Isn't that awful? And then they're gone. They don't add anything new to the conversation. And as I was saying, where we've been doing this for quite a long time, there's a lot of information now that we are going to be seeing that we're already aware of. But whether it's because we're paying more attention to what we're eating, or whether you're reading, different medical studies, or whether you're just going back and looking at information, we are going to start running into those things where you go, I already know all this. This is, there's no new information. But generally speaking, there's always something that we can take away from it. And aside from, the series itself, showing the different changes that people can make, whether it's individually or whether it's, there's one where there's an entire city, it's showing the improvements that they've made to their bike trail in an effort to sort of combat this as well. There's always something in there that's going to be new that either I didn't know, you may have known, but it's something that I didn't know that we can take away from it, something worthwhile. Not just someone saying, oh, well, we're changing everything by cutting out all fat, which we can't do because we need it, or cutting out all carbs, which we can't do because we need it. And I try to steer towards a lot of things that sort of stick with what we're trying to do, where we're just we're trying to improve our diet rather than go on one, where we're having that balance all the way around. We aren't overeating. We aren't, binging on snacks and, salty snacks or sweet snacks or whatever it is that's your weakness. that, we're just trying to eat normally, we're trying to eat healthy, things like that. So I try to steer more towards those. I know at some point I'm going to have to put up, some documentaries that go against the grain, against what I feel is probably the best practice. But just because I disagree with something doesn't necessarily mean that it doesn't have worth. I'm a big believer in the fact that you can balance everything out. We don't need to cut out all carbs because that's ridiculous. Your body needs them. Just like we don't need to cut out all fats because your body needs them. It's just everything in moderation. If we can eat normally, I think that's going to be the best bet. However, I can't deny that when people go, if they're doing something permanent, if they're saying, no, I'm cutting way back on this and way back on that, if it works, then for them, it works. So that's where I have that bit of a conflict, is I'm looking at stuff that I think is probably the best bet for me. And obviously, where it's been going on for 5 months, it's working well for all of us. But I don't want to sort of introduce a new fad into it and say, well, this person lost all the weight because they cut out all carbs. I know I keep sort of picking on carbs, but that's generally what people do. And for some people, it will work if they can maintain it. But when you cut out all carbs, I see that the same way as a regular diet. Same way as Atkins or keto or paleo or whatever myriad of different diets are out there. I see that the same way. I don't see it something that, for me anyway, would be sustainable. And I want us to sort of focus on what is going to be easily sustainable for the rest of our lives. But again, it doesn't mean it doesn't have value. So the information that is in there might be something that we can show, but I don't feel that it's something that... It's difficult to explain. Just because I disagree with something doesn't mean that we can't take something from it. So I'm very selective in what I put in there, but every now and then I know I'm going to eventually have to put something in there that I don't necessarily agree with, but that does have some information that's useful. So anyway, we won't get into all the dieting thing. They do actually have a neat little montage at the very beginning of the very first episode showing all the different people that they're interviewing, and they're going through the list of the different diets that they've tried. And obviously ones that have not worked for them or that they failed, however you want to look at that. It's going to try to be really polite and nice, but when we go through a diet and it doesn't work, we know they don't work because, again, it's a short-term, fix for a long-term issue. But when we go through those, we do fail at those because they just simply aren't designed to keep going. They're designed to lose a bunch of weight very quickly. You don't change any habits. You just basically starve yourself in one way or the other. You starve your body to a point where your weight drops. So, anyway, that's a topic for a whole different thing, which I think we've done before. But, okay, we're going to try to keep... We've done very well the past few days. I'm going to try to keep this under 15 minutes again. Anyway, go up, take a look. I'm going to put it once again in the recommended viewing. This one should stay there for quite some time because it's actually from the HBO YouTube channel. I'm also going to put a link in the description below to the website that they had for it. And so you can go in and take a look at a few little clips. You can read a lot more on it. There's just a wealth of information on how they produced it and who was involved with it, right down to the narrators, the different doctors that they had take part in it. And you can learn a lot more from them that way, aside from just watching it. But you can go up and watch little clips and highlights and things like that on the website as well. That one's going to be up there for a while as well. It's been up there for 3 years, so we should be good. But I'll put all this information in there. You can take what you need. That's one thing, too, that when we're looking at these, you are going to find, you're going to probably be in the same boat as me every now and then. You're going to see something that you don't necessarily agree with. That you're seeing some people that are, probably the same weight that you are, that are incredibly active, that are just going all out every single day. And you just think it's not, obviously, not everyone can do that. Just keep in mind when you see something like this that you don't agree with, or that you say, well, I've tried that and it didn't work, or whatever the situation is. Any information that you have, whether you agree with it or not, is still information that you can use. So not to just sort of brush it off, but to take a look at it as it's at its face value, basically, and look at it and say, okay, if I tried this and it didn't work, how did it work for them? There's always going to be something. And I'm not trying to be, super positive and just say, oh, well, you can always use something great. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you watch it and go, that's bullshit, and that just stays bullshit forever. But generally, that's the sort of thought process that I go through when I try to add a new documentary. So, and where we're sort of getting into familiar territory once again, where it does start repeating some information, there is going to be something new in there, whether you agree with it or not. But it doesn't mean that it's worthless. I've been proven wrong many, many, many times. I'll be proven wrong many, many more times. And that's sort of part of what we're doing here as well, is those preconceived notions that we have, saying, well, this won't work, and that won't work, and this won't work. When obviously it does. I guess the best example is to say, where we've looked at every single diet for so long and said, well, this is the one that's going to work, and it doesn't. Well, this is the one that's going to work, and it doesn't. So we're trying something new. And if you've gone this far, and if you're still with me after 5 months, roughly almost 5 months now, then obviously it's doing something. It's very slow going. It's going at a snail's pace, but it is working. And that's the thing. And that I think this, for me anyway, this is something that is going to be sustainable. And I said this before. I said it a couple times actually this week, that this is going to be something that I'm going to probably end up having to do for the rest of my life. I can't see myself just stopping and saying, well, I don't need to track anymore and I can eat what I want and it'll be great. I really don't think that's a viable option for me. I think that if I was, even now at this stage, if I was to stop and say, okay, I'm just not going to track my calories, I'm going to go and sort of eat when I'm hungry and go that way, I know that I would still sort of fall back into that, because I still have those days, more often than not, where I want to eat everything. And I am legitimately hungry. But I also have to sort of take into account that it's, my body's just used to overeating to capacity. So my stomach might actually be full, and it can still keep sending those signals going, you're hungry, keep eating, you're hungry, you haven't, gotten to the point where you're going to barf yet, keep eating. So I don't think that's something that's going to change anytime soon. So for me anyway, this is, I think, what's going to end up working. I'm going off topic once again, all over the place. All right, focus back again on HBO. HBO documentaries. They've got a ton more on their channel as well if you want to go up and take a look. But this series was something that really stood out. And it's one that I've been watching for the past couple of weeks when I have time, just because I didn't want to just sort of watch the first episode and say, oh, here you go, you go watch this one, and then save, next week do another episode, because it's sort of cheating that way. But this is a whole series, so you can go up, you can take a look at all 4 episodes. And as I say, they're going to be up there for a while, so hopefully that'll save me some time having to go through the channel again. But anyway, that's it. Go up, take a look. I'm going to put the link in the description below as well for their main website, so that you can go up and get a little bit more information on it. It goes through the production and the people involved and everything else, and you can see some snippets, and then you can go and watch the whole thing when you have time. So they're about an hour long each. There's 4 of them in total. Again, watch out for the numbering. It's a bit wonky, but you should be fine, because they aren't really interconnected really deeply, so you can sort of jump in between them, because they each have a different theme throughout the whole thing. Anyway, I'm going to start repeating myself, so once again, going to stop here. Thank you very much for watching today. If you liked this video, please poke the like button. I'm screwing this all up. And in the meantime, keep yourself warm and fuzzy, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.